Blog Talk Radio.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over that. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired! You know, some owner's going to do that. He's going to say, that guy that disrespects our flag, he's fired. And that owner, they don't know it. They don't know it. They're friends of mine, many of them. They don't know it. They'll be the most popular person for a week. They'll be the most popular person in this country because that's a total disrespect of our heritage. That's a total disrespect of everything that we stand for, okay? Everything that we stand for. And I know we have freedoms and we have freedom of choice and many, many different freedoms. But you know what? It's still totally disrespectful. And you know, when the NFL ratings are down massively, the NFL ratings are down massively.
Ladies and gentlemen of America, this is AJC Radio, and tonight we take a look at an interesting conversation that's going on in this nation. We're going to deal with one topic tonight, the right to protest under fire in America. What is going on? What in the world is the President of the United States talking about? We take a look at the right to protest under fire. Folks, hang on. We take off right now. And there you have it. I'm Lamont Banks along with Cliff Stewart, Dennis Merritt, William Williams. Lisa's off on assignment tonight. And I'll tell you what, folks, this is a conversation that is taken over the last few weeks in this country. We're going to deal with this topic tonight. And basically, why is the narrative changing? It is because folks do not want to talk about racism in this country right now. And it's not something you're going to be able to hide behind, nothing you're going to be able to duck about and not be able to deal with these issues. Why is it so difficult to have this conversation? Because people are not comfortable with the truth. And we're going to deal with that tonight. And I'll tell you what, the last thing that's going on in NFL stadiums, college stadiums, high school stadiums, little league stadiums is disrespect for our veterans, for our active men and women that are in uniform, or the flag itself. Actually, because of the flag, it gives us the right to protest and the freedom of speech. And we're going to get in that tonight. Feel free to dial into the show. Call in the 646-200-0628. That's 646-200-0628. And Dennis, let me start with you as we are going to be in conversation. Joining us tonight in studio, two veterans, and I'll tell you what, they have something to say about this latest situation. And we have Denver Harper and Norman Bowden, and we salute you folks tonight for your service to this nation. And they have a different perspective on this, as a lot of people, in spite of what you're hearing from President Trump, that people are outraged. And I'll tell you what, I'm an NFL fan from way back. And I'll tell you what, there hasn't been a game that I've seen on TV where ticket sales are down. These stadiums are packed. These stadiums are, they're bouncing. There's a lot of noise in these stadiums. I'm just waiting to see what seats are really empty in these stadiums. I don't see what the president is talking about, but he tends to create a narrative all its own to not deal with the facts that's going on in this situation. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be joined by Nico Perrino, and he's Director of Communications. He basically graduated from the University-Bloomington, with a bachelor's degree in journalism and history. And he's doing some work out here addressing these issues that is actually happening with these protests, but other things that he's doing in his actual job title. We're going to talk to him tonight. He's going to weigh in on the conversation as well, and we will bring him to you as well. So, Dennis, going back to you, this is something we said last week, critically important that we talk about these issues. There is a sense of bias against NFL players because of the amount of money they make. I heard somebody on CNN make the statement, these pampered athletes. Why don't you put on some pads, sir, and take one hit? And you tell me how these players are pampered. Some of these players came from very horrible situations. They've made it a success in the National Football League. They were able to provide better lives for their families. And you got the nerve to insult the hard work of these. Look, these men take a risk every day they're on that field. And to say something like that is the most idiotic thing I have ever heard in regards to this. And one of the gentlemen, we will locate his name before this show is over, contributor to CNN, made the statement, why is it all about race? Why do people keep talking about race? Because you're not black, sir. And apparently you don't get it. You're not going to get it. But there are white Americans that have a problem with what the president has done in condemning these players. So please make no mistake about it. We have some white Americans, Hispanic Americans, that feel the same outrage. That why are you bothering these folks? Because I'm going to tell you what, sports is universal. It crosses every racial line imaginable.
Exactly.
So this was a wrong fight to pick, in my opinion, because this is where people really come together. And how they tried to portray that America was divided down the middle on the disrespect of the flag, don't think so. Dennis, your thoughts as we get ready to take off on this one?
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's truly sad how they took the America flag and try to make it look as though the players are disrespecting the flag. They're not mentioning the reason why these men and women and young children are saying, hey, enough is enough. The flag is supposed to represent a country without bias, a country that's fair, a country that regardless of your race, you're treated the same. That's what the United States flag is supposed to represent. But when you have one group of people or a group of people that is constantly, and I have to, and they hate you to bring this up, but, the black men without weapons being shot and killed, enough is enough. We got to stop turning our heads away from truth. I mean, we have a problem in America. We need to address it. The only way you're going to address it or fix it is talk about it. No one wants to talk about the word racism. We want to act like it doesn't exist. Look, you can go to school with us now. You can now you can go to a store. You can buy whatever you want. You don't have to sit in the back of the bus anymore. All this stuff, it's just so ridiculous. But we have to really look at it. When we got we got three of our children, 1 in 3 of our children guaranteed to go to prison. We've got a problem. We got a serious problem. We need to address it. But one thing I really disrespect is when we take the American flag and we grab our soldiers and our war fighters and we throw them all into the mix and we try to make it as though those athletes are disrespecting, our American soldiers, and that's not true at all.
Well, we're going to get some comments from folks that did 20-plus years in our armed services, and I'll tell you, I'm anxious to have Norman Bowden, Denver Harper weigh in on this conversation. These are men that have had their share of war, if you will, and they know. If anybody knows, if this is a sign of disrespect, these two gentlemen will definitely know after the sacrifices that they have made, and we look forward to that. Going to some current news right now, President Trump, visited Puerto Rico today, and there's some conversation going on about the conduct of President Trump. Made the statement basically that 16 people had died, and they were lucky that it wasn't more people. This was his statement to the Puerto Rican island. Certain things that are being said just doesn't make any sense. One person writes on Facebook, Stony Sheen says, I can't believe what Donald Trump said to Puerto Rico, how they're ruining our budget. Then compares them to Katrina and says theirs is not that bad. That basically blames them for a hurricane. I'm sorry, even if you're a Trump supporter, you cannot support the ignorance that he spews. He's Puerto Rico's president, too. I'm beginning to think this, okay, we're going to leave that out. But some selective words there. What do you think of that with Puerto Rico?
It's just ridiculous. I mean, again, the comment was he's their president, too. I mean, and then I don't know if you guys heard about where he was throwing paper towels out to the crowd.
And toilet paper.
I mean, come on. There's certain things that we don't expect from the president of the United States. But again, it's about taking care of people, and we really got to look at that. And I don't know how the president, the Puerto Rican government felt about that, but I'm sure we'll find out. But come on, let's do the right thing. And you continue to hear stuff like that, it makes you wonder, wow, really? No, he didn't do that. Come on, you're lying. I actually said that. But then I read it, and I said, okay, all right.
Well, the lady makes
did that.
The lady makes the statement, Deborah Pound states, I have no words to say about pitching paper towels like footballs or handing out what looks like tuna cans or people taking pictures. This is a natural disaster. This is a disaster zone. Cliff, chime in for me, please.
Yeah, this is just totally ridiculous. I mean, wow. You don't treat people. I mean, if they weren't American citizens, these are people who are going through a tragedy. People are dying in Puerto Rico, and for him to go over there and and just use this as a photo shoot, really, and saying, hey, here's some paper towels for you. Aren't we doing a great job? Our first responders, I give us an A+. Well, the dead people there in Puerto Rico, they don't give you an A+. The people who died in the hospital because there was no diesel fuel to keep the machine on, something as simple as bring us 100 gallons of fuel so we can keep the heart machines and the dialysis machines on in the hospital. You cannot give yourself an A+ for when those are the type of failures that cost people lives. And then to go in and say, well, this is not a real disaster like Katrina. What are you talking about? Where have you been for the last 70 years in America?
Yeah.
And how do you look at a tragedy like a hurricane striking an island, putting over 3 million people out of electricity, out of telecommunications, no medical supplies, no water, nothing? And you say, well, I give us an A+, and this is better than Katrina. Well, one life is not better than one life taken is not better than anything. You don't put that type of comparison on people losing their lives, and it's just terrible. Now, is he or did he go into some of those rural areas where people have no telecommunications? I mean, to go to San Juan, the capital, yeah, they're doing everything there because the tourists are going to be coming back, so they're trying to build that up. What about the people that are out there that nobody knows are there, can't communicate, that are drinking out of streams? And this person calling himself the president is pitching paper towels to the crowd and saying, aren't we doing a great job? Aren't you having a good time? No, I'm not having a good time. I need a bottle of water. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely right. And Stacy Ritson writes, during his visit, what we just talked about, cameras captured President Trump throwing rolls of paper towels out into the crowd like a shopping mall Santa Claus, tossing out candy to kids in a natural disaster site. Unbelievable, folks. Tune in to any network other than Fox on that one. You'll probably get some clear reporting on that issue. This is Lamont Banks with AJC Radio. Grab something to drink, a beverage. We're coming back with the topic, the right to protest. Get your kiddies gathered around the computer. Let them hear this one as kids are taking a stand and taking a knee. We're coming right back. This is AJC Radio, Spotlight on Capitol Hill Thursday. We'll be right back. For a kid whose mom or dad is in prison, life is tough. Now add a wrongful conviction to that. Life just got a little bit tougher. Trying to explain to friends why mom or dad is not at the school play or at the ball game is something that no kid should ever be faced with. Especially if mom or dad is innocent. Ladies and gentlemen, get involved today to stop the epidemic of wrongful convictions. By remembering a just cause with a monthly, annual, or one-time donation, you can help in the fight against wrongful convictions. Call a just cause today. 1-855-529-4252. We seek justice for the children as they go to bed at night and mom's not there, dad's not in the other room to make them feel safe. Not because dad or mom did anything wrong, because justice could not be found. Join us for the children, for they truly are our future.
I wanted to be in the military since I was a kid.
I served in the United States Air Force.
I served a total of 16 years.
I was deployed 13 times.
On my second deployment, 4 bombs hit my vehicle.
And at 19 years old, that's the first time I ever saw somebody die.
Coming back, I was raging.
I started having pretty horrible nightmares.
I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweats.
I started drinking a lot.
I felt worthless.
I guess I never recognized it in myself.
Eventually, one day, I just walked into the VA hospital and said I'd like to see somebody.
Don't suffer alone. You got to find that link with somebody that'll make you let it go. It all starts with going to the VA. There's a whole community of veterans that just want to help you out.
It's for the guys who couldn't come back, so you owe it to them to live well, because they're not here with their families.
And welcome back in, folks. This is AJC Radio as we address the issue tonight of the right to protest under fire. Before the break, we said Spotlight on Capitol Hill Thursday. That's what impact is happening here at AJC Radio for our members of Congress, but that is Thursday, not tonight. So use that as a commercial introduction, if you will, for Thursday. And that's my error. But we're getting back on topic with conversation in regards to the right to protest that has been on every news station, newspaper, magazine, everywhere regarding really the big talk was the National Football League being brought into a situation of being really admonished by the President of the United States for those that chose to take a knee. I explained this last week, and I'm going to explain it again, that Colin Kaepernick kneeled out of respect for the flag because at first what he was doing was sitting. A former Green Beret active duty member came to him and said, look, I'm upset about this. And he said he was actually on the CNN town hall about this. And he said to Colin, hey, man, can you just do this versus just sitting back? Can you take a knee? And they actually got into discussion about it, that it would show respect even more for the flag, that he would take a knee during the national anthem. And people have been known to take a knee in a picture of perception, if you will, of reverence. Yes. I thought that's what taking a knee was. Now, sitting down, I believe you still have that right, but this is how they have changed the narrative in the discussion. And he said, after talking to Colin, he said they're good friends now. Colin, excuse me. They're good friends now. And Colin said, you know what? I'll go ahead and do that. And that's what he did. And they're trying to make this guy out to some villain that hates officers, hates veterans. He called police officers out. He said this country is injustice, and it's racially injustice towards African Americans and people of color. And he said until it changes, we need to bring awareness to this. Cliff, we've been talking a while now in regards to that people are acting like this is a new thing happening of protest. Martin Luther King said it best. He said, I read somewhere that we have the right to protest. That is your constitutional right. And for anybody to tell you how to do it, here's what's so bizarre. It is a peaceful protest that lasts about, 30 seconds? And I'm talking about as far as the football games. 30 seconds of silence from that person that says what that flag stands for is freedom for all. When freedom for all is not happening, why would I salute the flag? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Cliff, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why soldiers go to war. That's why we have the right to vote. That's why we have the freedom of speech. That protesting is a form of freedom of speech and expression. We have the right to say what we don't agree with. Otherwise, we'd be living under a absolutism regime. That is not what America is supposed to be. You have the right to say, I don't agree with the government. This is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. If you start telling the people what they can do when it comes to protesting and expressing themselves, then you have tyranny. And that's not the way that the Constitution was written. That's not the way the forefathers of America intended it to be. And I think the worst part of it is for the president to get up and say that these, basic rights of protest should be stripped from American citizens. And when I say stripped, I mean telling basically a corporate employer that if your employees protest for their rights, then you should terminate their job. That is a violation of everything presidential And it's also a violation of people's constitutional rights. And that's not the way that America was supposed to be laid out. And that's why we have to continue to fight for protest, just like we do for other civil justice.
And I'm going to go to our one of our guests here, one of our veterans that's in studio with us tonight, Denver Harper. Denver, you had a statement in regards to some other actions that were happening in regards to the American flag. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, during the 1960s, white people were burning the American flag. What happened to the complaint about that? Nobody did anything about it. It was during the draft period. It was during the Vietnam era. There were people going to Canada to get away from the draft. And the way that the people that went to like Norman and I went to Vietnam, when I returned from Vietnam, I got off the plane and they were demonstrating. We got spit upon, we got called names, we were baby killers, we were all these things, but nobody did anything about the people who burned the flag.
And Denver, introduce yourself to the folks. Tell them your years of service in this country. I'm sorry that I don't think you have the opportunity to do that. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay, I'm Master Sergeant Denver Harper. I served in the United States Army for over 20 years. I was, I guess, the one that you want to get down to where I spent most time in Vietnam as a special operations person. And I saw what happens to people who don't have the freedom and the right to do things. I mean, they were killed or maimed or whatever. And I, as an American, serve my country. And I give the authorization for anyone that want to kneel, join arms together in protest of what's happening. Not only is this thing happening on the streets of America, it's still happening in the military.
Well, and good point, Denver. I'm going to come to Norman here momentarily. I'll tell you what, this is something, and you're right. You can just go to YouTube or anywhere and see footage of protest. Protest is nothing new in this country, but it's always an issue if African Americans are doing it.
That's right.
Why is that? You can have white supremacists walk down the street back in the day with hoods, everything else.
A couple of months ago.
Well, we know in Charlottesville, but I'm saying this goes way back.
But I look at it in this facet is that being a black in the military, you serve your country and you be quiet.
We're going to get more to that. Norman, your thoughts really quick on the controversy of folks kneeling. Is it, as you being a veteran, served, and thank you for your service, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I don't see it as an issue because it has nothing to do with the flag at all. Protests, like you said, has been going on for years. I was looking at an article earlier today about Smith and Carlos back in 1968 when they stood up for the same thing. They was protesting the injustice in this country towards blacks. It had nothing to do with the flag. And then there was a young white man that stood with them. And there was others that said, hey, they approved of what they was doing, but they was never actually talked about. Only, as you said before, the black people. If black protest, it's an issue. But when whites protest, there's nothing said about it.
And the question is why is that? And it's because it becomes uncomfortable for people to deal with controversy. People don't like dealing with conflict. Well, my question is, and the question to the president is this. You opened up that rally in Alabama, not talking about honor the flag. You insulted the mothers of these athletes. And you basically called the mothers of the NFL players the B word. Mm-hmm. The mothers. Now, back in the day, you don't talk about your mama. You know what I mean? Those are fighting words in the day. Wait a minute. Well, you know, you can talk about my best friend. You can say whatever you want. If somebody uttered the words, your mama, we got a problem. And I'll tell you this. Nobody's addressing that. It speaks to the motive of the president. It's not about, as Norman Bowden alluded to, it's not about the flag. You called NFL players SOBs. That's what you did. So if you actually do that, it's a level of disrespect. It's a place that you just simply cannot go. William.
You know, you bring up a very interesting point because, you know, the thing that's been really bothering me was that, you look at both rallies from Charlottesville and you look at, you know, his comments he made in Alabama about, and both of them are demonstrations, both of them are protests, both of them are groups that have a right to do so. Now, with Charlottesville, he said there are decent people on both sides. He did not say that in the NFL. He did not even give them, or with the NFL players, he did not even give them that kind of latitude to say, you know what, they have a right to protest. He went straight there, and like you said, he called them out in Alabama, appealing to his base, definitely seeing the opportunity to solidify his political agenda and go at these players. And the bottom line is they have a right. Just as much as the guys in Charlottesville have a right, they have a right.
No, well said. And right now going to be joining us here right now is Nico Perrino. And hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. We're honored to have him on the show. I'm going to let him actually do the introductions for himself. Mr. Perrino, how are you doing this evening? Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, and we appreciate you. Why don't you, I'm sure you've heard the conversation we're having, and it goes, it definitely goes along the lines of free speech, constitutional rights. This is something that, in my opinion, Mr. Perrino, we haven't seen in this country on this level coming from the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. I've never seen nothing like it. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and we're going to get into dialogue on this conversation along with our two special guests, veterans who are speaking out about this type of a controversy that's going on in our country right now.
Yeah, well, I work for the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, and since 1999, we've defended free speech and academic freedom and the rights to protest and assemble on college campuses. And your talk here about the events that are happening in communities across the country are things that we've been seeing happen on college campuses for years now. And, you know, I think the tensions that have risen since the president's election last year have boiled over not only on campuses, but also into our public square. And the broader society is now starting to have these conversations.
Mr. Perrino, I hate to interrupt you. You're breaking up a little bit on us as far as the quality. Are you in this location where you can move around a little bit? We want to make sure folks don't miss what you're saying here.
Yeah, I'm actually on a landline, so I can try and call back from a different line if that's better.
Why don't you try that, Ms. Perrino, and we're going to pick it up right from there, so we'll be waiting on you momentarily. I think what you're saying is critically important. I can make out what you're saying. I don't want the listeners to miss the points that you're making. I think they're critically important to this discussion. So if you'll do that for us, and we'll do. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, folks, and we're going to get him back on. I don't know if you heard he was breaking up pretty bad. We want to make sure what he's talking about is critically important. And again, these are things and topics that you have to know we're going to have. Anything that shakes a country, and if you remember when Colin began to deal with the racial issues in this country, it was during one of the most horrific times in this country with police brutality, unarmed black men being shot dead. And we talked about this during the time we were talking about Black Lives Do Matter, and how in the Aurora shooting, Mr. Holmes, a white gentleman, came out completely dressed out in gear, Cliff, with ammunition, with weapons. He happened to walk away alive. But you got a man on the corner with CDs. You wrestle him to the ground and pump his chest full of lead. He's not armed. He shows no threat.
Nope.
How does an armed man come out of the theater and live?
Well, what you're talking about, Mont? I mean, this is you talk about Michael Brown, Alton Sterling, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Freddie Graham, Gray, Philando Castillo. You're not talking about one case. You're talking about these that are just off the top of my head, and you're talking about years of this that you've seen in multiple areas across the country. And you're seeing police officers doing this. These are unarmed black men. Alton Sterling that you talked about was laying flat on his back. The officer was standing on top of him. Video showed it. They pumped him with shots. Okay? I mean,
this is the cry.
No convictions.
This is the cry. Michael Brown, Walter Scott in Charleston, South Carolina. That happened. He was running, but the officer tried to plant something. That man was shot 8 times, I believe.
If my memory serves me well, he was going away from the officer.
He was running away.
So the cops sent warning shots in his back.
Yes.
Okay.
And to add insult to injury or murder, none of these police officers were convicted. I mean, none of them were convicted.
None.
And that is what the cry of the African American community is that if this happens and you say, well, it was an accident, it wasn't supposed to happen, how do you shoot a man in the back, plant a gun on him, and then the officer is acquitted of all charges? Those are the type of things that say that we need to have protests to get that type of action under control. We have Mr. Perrino is back on the line, ready to go. And this time, let's see if we have a clear connection. Nico, you're live. Go ahead.
Well, I'm hoping my connection's clear, and I thank you all again for having me on the show. And this topic is of critical importance right now. And as I was saying before I lost my connection earlier, this is a conversation we've been having on college campuses for years now. And as tensions start to rise in the broader society, we're seeing it boil over into places like Charlottesville and also onto our National Football League.
No, absolutely right. And these are things that as we were talking moments ago while you were calling back in, we were discussing this because how in the world, and anybody, if we go through a thing in this country where children are being taken off of playgrounds and murdered, the country would be outraged. The voices would be everywhere. Protect America's children. What are we doing? Nobody would have a problem with that. But because we want to address racial injustice, how is our cause, how is the African American community any less important than our children? Human life is human life. This is what is outrageous about it. Your thoughts on that, Nico?
Well, my thoughts are that the right to protest and to assemble in whatever way you see fit is a crucial American right, not just because it's by the First Amendment, but because we have seen that public participation and debate and discussion and dissent are critical values in any sort of democracy. And I think it's probably a bad tactic. Actually, I know it's a bad tactic to tell people that you're protesting in the wrong way or you're protesting in the wrong way if the way that they are protesting is peaceful. And I know you were having a conversation about this NFL controversy earlier, and for better or worse, unfortunately, you don't have a First Amendment right to, for example, to kneel down during the Pledge of Allegiance. It's based on contractual agreements with your employer. Your employer's more than willing to allow you to do that, but it doesn't involve First Amendment implications. But what it does involve is free speech norms, which I think should be important in this country. And I think from a normative, ethical standpoint, we should allow people to speak out on issues that are of concern to them, so long as they're doing so peacefully. And we've seen people do it in violent ways as well recently.
No, absolutely right. I agree with that. Right now, we're going to play a clip. I want to get your thoughts on it. It's a veteran that is actually crying out for the right to kneel. and his position on it as our two veterans joining us in studio tonight as well. We're going to get their thoughts on it as well. Let's hear the clip and we'll get right back with you.
I fought for the right to kneel. Don't let your owners, masters tell you when, where, and how you can peaceful protest. They need your labor. My name is Jared Thomas, and I'm a combat veteran. I served in Afghanistan under Operation Enduring Freedom in 2009 and 2010. No one considers flying the flag at half-mast disrespectful. To a lot of people, it's a symbol of respect. It symbolizes mourning. It's a response to national distress. But for many, myself included, kneeling during the national anthem is a symbol of social distress. And I think that it pays respect to our nation because it's a cordial way of broadcasting our dissatisfaction with the social injustices that we've seen in this nation currently and historically. The issue, and this has always been the issue, it resides in who gets to prescribe these definitions for these actions. And I think it's pretty obvious that with the NFL being the majority of people of color, them standing up and voicing their opinions, I think that that's one of the reasons why we have this weaponizing of patriotism. It's basically declaring someone unpatriotic for standing firmly for what they believe in. And I know that sounds silly. I think it's very contradictory to tell someone through means of coercion when, where, and how you should peacefully protest. I think that if this was in any other context, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. But since the NFL and it's looking like now the NBA, since these are predominantly minority sports, minority athletes, it's an issue. But my message to you and to them, to everyone, don't let anyone tell you where and how it's appropriate to peaceful protest. By doing this, you're obeying and you're confirming your powerlessness. Don't allow the hand that feeds you the privilege of suppressing your voice by keeping your mouth full.
Well, there you have it. This is a veteran, and what was missed there on part of the clip, the background noise was so loud, so we couldn't get all of it in, but he was yelling while traffic was driving by, saying, I fought for the right to kneel. I fought for that purpose. And he says here, if anyone gives you a definition of what your protest is, we don't surrender that. Nobody can tell a man in the civil rights movement, when they peacefully protested, they were sprayed with fire hoses. They were doing nothing. They were not violent. They wanted to know why they had to use a separate bathroom from white people. They wanted to know why I couldn't drink out the same fountain as a white person. They wanted to know, why did I have to use a separate restroom? Because I was black. We have a right to protest injustice. And Nico, your thoughts on that as you heard what the veteran had to say.
Well, I love how you put this in historical context, talking about the civil rights movement and how crucial the right to protest and assemble was for that movement. And I'd also put this discussion about sporting events in a historical context. You know, we all remember that image of the men and standing in first and I believe second or third place with their fists in the air. And at the time, incredibly controversial. But we almost look at it today in reverence. They were standing against injustice. And we also can remember Muhammad Ali, who lost 3 of his prime fighting years because he stood up and was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. At the time, there was a ton of public outcry for that decision, you know, in opposition to Muhammad Ali. But today we sort of look on it as an American tragedy. And 5-10 years down the line, maybe even a couple of months down the line, we might look at this debate and discussion in the same way.
And let me get some words from our in studio veterans here. Norman Bowden, Denver Harper. When you hear that your brother talk about that he fought to give us this right, what are your thoughts on that? Then, Norman, I want your thoughts.
That is right on. That is spot on. I had 3 uncles to serve in the military, 2 in World War II rather, and 1 in Vietnam at the same time that I was there. And that gives I am forfeiting my right to everyone that want to kneel, hold in arms. I mean, we were willing to give our life for this, and we fought. We followed orders. We did what we had to do, and we were proud of it. We came home with our chest stuck out and our head held high, and we stayed in the military, retired from the military, and we are proud of the military. And we have that right to perform any protest we want to.
Norman?
Hey, not only did we come home with our chest stuck out, but we were proud to wear that uniform.
Exactly.
I mean, we came home with a uniform that, hey, we did our part. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me the most about this president. He talks about disrespecting the flag, but I don't think he really knows what it means to serve for the flag. This man got 5 deferments to keep from going in the military. None of his family members went. I went to Vietnam twice. I have 2 brothers that went to Vietnam. One of them was actually injured over there, and I've never heard either one of them talk disrespectful against the flag or anything else, because it had nothing to do with the flag. It was a right to do so. We volunteered to do so, and we served proudly. And so I think anybody that wants to protest, they have a right to do so. And I'm proud of what this young man said about protesting.
Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, these are men who fought to give us the right and the choice.
That's exactly.
Right.
This is so you can, Mr. President Trump, and all those that support this thought. We have 2 veterans combined for over 45 years of service to this nation. They're saying we fought for the right. That if I don't want to stand, I fought and risked my life to give you that choice.
Exactly.
Am I here? Is that correct what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
That's correct.
Nico, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I 100% agree. I think, as I said, you don't really have a constitutional right to kneel, but you, I think, have a moral and ethical right to kneel. And I think that should be as robustly protected as our First Amendment right, because the First Amendment is undergirded by these core principles of free speech and protest.
And I think what they say all the time when you protest, they say this when folks get in the street and they're marching because of violence, because of this, because of that. Well, that's not peaceful. I don't know what's more peaceful than being quiet and simply taking a knee. That's not violent.
Not at all.
That's peaceful. They're not yelling at the flag. They're not running on the field trying to take it off the field. They're not doing none of that. They're not burning it. And as Denver alluded to earlier, that was during the Vietnam era when they burnt the flag. Is that correct? And when soldiers are coming home being spit on, cussed out, how is that honored? And the same people that spit at them will go to a stadium and stand during the national anthem.
Exactly.
Can you help me with that? So what are we really talking about here?
I mean, during the DNC convention, they were on the outside burning flags. And what amazes me is that there's no outcry against the burning of the flag, right. but there's so much outcry. It's just ridiculous that when you kneel, it's more outcry against kneeling than burning the flag. During the convention, all of them. The Republicans, against Hillary, they were, blasting her profanity, burning flag. President Trump didn't say nothing then because he was running against her. Well, but see, that's the sad thing. I mean, come on, let's do it right. I mean, you're gonna talk about how much you love the flag, but when it was told that they were burning flags outside the convention, what did you say? Absolutely nothing. I don't even think there was really even no coverage of the burning of the flag. You got a few stories on it, but when it comes to African American kneeling
in silence,
and now all of a sudden, oh, look at him, he's non-American.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. And we're talking about an attack on a diplomat of this country, in Hillary Clinton, whether you agree with her or not. She's a U.S. diplomat. She served 8 years not only 8 years, her entire life.
Yes.
In public service. Is that not a dishonoring of our nation when we do that to our officials that have given really their life of public service to give to this nation? That's regardless of what party you're in or what party you represent. Nico, we're going to take a quick break. If you got a few more minutes, I know you are, I believe, on the East Coast. And
I am.
We can bring you back. You got a few more minutes to spend with us?
Sure do.
Okay, folks, we're coming back. This is AJC Radio. We're joined tonight by Nico Perrino, and he's giving some perspective here on the topic. Also, Denver Harper, retired Master Sergeant. Is that correct, Denver? And Norman Bowden. Norman, your rank was what at retirement?
Retired First Sergeant.
Retired First Sergeant. We're honored and privileged to have them in our studio to bring perspective to the conversation tonight. This is AJC Radio. We'll be right back.
Say goodbye to affordability and say hello to losing control. Discover Price Gougasol, the latest outrageously expensive drug from Big Pharma. It's impossible to afford and reverses the ability to pay other bills. Because drug companies raise prices to pay for commercials like this one, side effects may include overdrawn bank accounts, bad credit scores, higher healthcare costs, children who don't get Christmas presents, and in some cases, the need to stop taking your medicine. If you experience any of these side effects, contact your financial advisor right away. Out-of-control drug costs are no joke. Yet 9 of the 10 biggest pharma companies spend more on advertising than research and development. Let's solve the cost crisis now. Visit csrxp.org.
I stand for equality.
I stand for individuality.
I stand for peace.
I stand for diversity.
I stand for dignity.
I stand for respect. I stand for fairness.
Red, yellow, black, white. We're all the same color.
When you turn out the lights.
There's a lot of mud when it rains here, and it makes it really hard to find food. There are car bombs every day. My mom worries about me when I go out. Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid. Sometimes I have nightmares about it. A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed. I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close. My dad says we have to leave, which makes me scared. I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us. What if they don't understand our religion? Because we don't speak the language, it might be hard for me to make friends. But I know it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be worth it. I just want my family to be safe. But these are not my words. These are not my words. These are not my words.
Do you know anyone who's been sent to prison who's innocent? The United States is experiencing record numbers of exonerations in cases where people were wrongfully convicted of crimes they did not commit. If you believe that no one should be sent to prison for crimes they didn't commit, there is something that you can do today. By remembering a just cause with a monthly, annual, or one-time donation, you can help in the fight against wrongful convictions. Call a Just Cause at 855-529-4252 or visit a-justcause.com and click the donate button. A Just Cause is a 501c3. Wrongful convictions are wrong. Let's be the voice of those who can't speak from behind the wall.
This is Julie. How may I help you?
My husband and I just got in a fight, and he hit me.
With one call, you don't have to be a victim anymore.
These fights are getting worse. I don't know what to do.
With one call, you can end the cycle of violence.
We're glad you called. The first thing we want to do is to ensure your safety.
With one call, you can change everything. To speak to a domestic abuse victim advocate, contact your local family advocacy program.
Good morning, students, and welcome to Career Day. I hope you're excited to hear about all the great things you can do when you grow up.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I'm super excited to introduce my dad because he's my hero. When I was little, my dad was away a lot, but I was okay with that because he was doing this really important work driving ambulances in Iraq. Now he's at home, which is great for me because I get to see him every day now. And he's still the biggest hero I know because he tells all the ambulances and the fire engines where to go and rescue people when there's an emergency. I'm so proud of him. He's awesome. He's my dad.
If your service-connected disability prevents you from continuing in your civilian career, Voc Rehab offers counseling, training with a living allowance, education, and other services to help prepare you for your next mission.
And there you have it. Welcome back, folks of America. This is AJC Radio, where we bring the message of justice all around the world. And tonight is no exception as we have begun to dig into the conversation of the right to protest. And you're starting to really realize the importance of that right. And when I say the right to protest, that's exactly what I mean. You have the right to protest, to assemble, to speak out, and to do it peaceably. And we're still being challenged, the African-American community, predominantly, people of color, anytime they protest, there's a problem. And we're going to dig deeper into that conversation. We've been honored tonight in studio with us, Denver Harper, 20 years in the United States Army. Norman Bowden, 22 years in the United States Army. And we are more than honored and privileged to have them. And, of course, we have our host, original host, if you will, Dennis Merritt, who is on the veteran part of our team, and he gives some insight. We appreciate that tonight from all three of you folks. And, again, Mr. Perrino, thank you for joining us tonight and being a part of this conversation. I think you bring a different and a good perspective on it. Let me ask you a question. If there was anything we needed to say to the American people listening tonight, how do we encourage our fellow Americans that this conversation is okay to have and change really needs to happen? What do we say to each other, and how do we start that conversation?
Well, I would start the conversation by encouraging people to recognize that the freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to protest is a right that protects all of our sacred values. You know, today, for example, it might be for NFL players to protest injustice, but tomorrow it might be for you speaking out, you know, in favor of the flag or in favor of nationalistic values against someone who seeks to, for example, or seeks to oppose them, or is running for governor or president and opposes them. You know, freedom of speech protects all of our rights, and it takes almost our ox getting gored for us to recognize how important it is. No,
I totally agree with that, Ms. Perrino. And look, tell the folks a little bit about what got you into the work that you're doing to be in these type of conversations. What motivated you and drove you to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, but when I was younger, I participated in a fifth grade class play called The Trial of John Peter Zenger. And it was about this man, John Peter Zenger, who was living in the then British colony of New York and was put on trial for the crime of seditious libel for simply criticizing the governor of New York, the royal governor of New York. And I learned at that time how unique it is that we live in a country at this time and in this age where we can speak out and criticize our government. Because for most of human history, and actually for most people living today, that's not always the case. Freedom House, which is a nonprofit watchdog group, found that only 13% of the world population, for example, lives in a country where there is a free press. So I started to recognize how unique this value was, and sort of also recognized how the freedom of speech is a vehicle for me to be who I am and to speak my mind on issues of public concern. But I also recognized that the freedom of speech, if it was going to protect my right to speak out on issues that matter to me, it needs to protect everyone's right to speak out and be who they are as well. And today, for example, as I said, it might be the players in the NFL protesting injustice, but tomorrow, even if you agree with them, it might be your ox that's getting gored, and you will at that time need the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech is a value, is a protection that protects the minority, it protects the dissenters, it protects the people who think different, as Steve Jobs might have put it. You don't need the freedom of speech to protect the ideas that everyone agrees with. Democracy does that. Majoritarianism does that.
No, I agree with that, Mr. Perrino. Out of respect for your time again there on the East Coast, I want to thank you for taking some moments tonight and spending the time that you've given to us here on this program. We appreciate it so very much. And I will be in touch with you as this conversation, I'm sure, is going to evolve. You have an open invitation to come back on our show. If you have a platform, different issues that you're dealing with as you pursue for the freedom of speech and the rights of Americans, please feel free to call us. You'll always have a platform here on AJC Radio.
Thank you again, and thank you also for discussing this super important issue.
Thank you so much. You have a good rest of the evening. And there you have it, folks. Nico Perrino, Director of Communications, and does a lot of work for FIRE, that organization, doing a lot of stuff. And when you listen to that, Dennis, what he's talking about, that someone was, as we look at even more further back in history, people were killed at times for protesting against whatever cause they may have had. The civil rights movement, of course, people died for the right to protest. So we're not only talking about the soldiers, as we give respect to them, those that had the courage to stand. Ultimately, Martin Luther King was killed for his right to protest and to speak out against injustice. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, and as Mr. Nico Perrino was saying, that we got to make sure that right, that ability, that the First Amendment guarantees the freedom to express ourselves or to assemble. But it's truly what he was saying is that, no matter how you look at it, if you take it away from one, then you're taking it away from another. So you got to make sure that right remains, so that when people have a problem, because he said when everybody agrees, it doesn't matter. But because of that disagreement, that's why we have such a great country, because not everybody believes in the same thing. But we come together and we make it work. But when you start stifling voices, when you start, putting lines between people and then creating, this false narrative that because I kneeled, I hate the flag or I hate our soldiers, that's a bit much, and it's untrue. He has the right to kneel. Anybody has the right to kneel. And you know what's sad about it? We talked about this the other night. If I kneel in that stadium with more than 60, 70,000 people, doesn't matter. No one really even cares. No one will even see that I kneel but those that are closest to me. But when that NFL player kneels, the whole world sees it. And that's his way of saying we have some problems in this country and we need to address it. That's why we're talking about it today. Again, if Dennis Merritt kneeled at a football stadium against the flag because of the injustice to black men being shot by police officers, no one would ever know.
Well, we're going to go now, and good point made. The fact that people are talking about it tells you the magnitude of the platform in which it is coming from.
Exactly.
And that is the point. That is the point.
That's the point.
Because if I would love a veteran to kneel at a football game and let President Trump call them that they're not patriotic. A veteran.
With combat.
Well, if you kneel, you show disrespect to the flag and to the men that gave their life for it. What you going to say, Mr. President, when veterans are kneeling? What you got to say there?
That's true.
Let's hear this clip. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee really hit me. She takes a stand on the House floor.
We simply ask for the dignity of respect to not call our mothers a son of a bee. And if they kneel, as I heard a young man who's an NFL player said that he will kneel from now on. And the only reason he's doing it is because someone had the lack of judgment to provoke the situation and call their mothers a name. I refuse to accept that as the standard of leadership for the highest office in the world. And even if you never understand it, sir, if you never understand it, if you think you're playing to your base, if you're not the unifier, we will continue to stand in the gap, and racism is going to be under our foot. And you know where else it's going to be? It's going to be under our knee. Because we in the Congressional Black Caucus have always stood for what is right. And the First Amendment, there is no basis in the First Amendment that says that you cannot kneel on the national anthem or in front of the flag. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of press. Prohibition against abridging freedom of speech applies to Congress and state and local governments through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Speech may be abridged in two distinct ways: directly by regulating content of speech, by indirectly by regulating time, manner, and place. And so you cannot abridge by standing up with tweets. And you cannot abridge without law and regulation. And there is no regulation that says that these young men cannot stand against the dishonoring of their mothers by you calling them fire the son of a bee. You tell me which of those children's mothers are a son of a bee. That is racism. You cannot deny it. You cannot run for it. And I kneel in honor of them. And on this floor, I kneel in honor of the First Amendment. I kneel because the flag is a symbol for freedom. I kneel because I'm going to stand against racism. I kneel because I will stand with those young men, and I'll stand with our soldiers, and I'll stand with America because I kneel.
Expired.
I yield back.
Well, there you have it. How powerful is that? Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee makes a statement, and when you look at her, she drops to her knee in honor of the flag. Mr. President, do you call Congressman or Congresswoman Jackson Lee non-patriotic? An elected official of the United States Congress who was voted and brings to life we the people, by the people, for the people. She was elected and has been on Capitol Hill quite some time. What do you say to that? To all those, are elected officials non-patriotic when they give their life daily to bring change to this nation and laws to this nation? Norman, your thoughts on Congresswoman Jackson Lee and that statement she just made?
And I thought it was powerful. I thought that was, I would have loved to have been there just to kneel the same time she knelt. You can't get more patriotic than that. And talking about disrespect, as we talk about this, I can see nobody in that administration that's more disrespectful to the American people than the president himself. I mean, look at the things he's doing and saying. Just go back to Puerto Rico, throwing tissue at the people. To me, that was totally disrespect. And, of course, calling the NFL members SOBs. No president of the United States should use that kind of language in the position that he's. Look at all of these small kids, children that's listening to him as he speaks those words. I think it's just totally disrespectful and out of line.
Denver, your thoughts?
I am so proud to have served so she could kneel.
That's awesome. That's awesome. William?
Well, that was awesome. I mean, it was absolutely awesome for her to take that stand and use the platform for exactly what it's for, to say, listen, they have a right. I'm standing here and I'm kneeling for the right of free speech and the respect of the flag. She's an elected official and she has earned the right to do so, and demonstrates the fact that, it is her right, but also to bring light to the social injustice that this whole movement was founded. The fact that these lives matter, the injustice that's going on is real, and people need to start to really have the serious conversation about that instead of about the kneeling, the actual action. Start to have the real serious conversation about the social injustice behind it.
Dennis.
Yeah, that's so true. What she did, again, if we could just get America to put themselves in, that individual family that lost their son who was unarmed but shot repeatedly. If we could get people to turn around, but you see, people don't look at anything like that until it happens to them, and that's sad to say. But until America says, you know what, maybe let's just say maybe they're saying something that's true. Let's look at this. Why did all these black men get killed that were unarmed? Why did the theater shooter, and all these other people that did these horrific killings, why did they survive? Why were they able to be brought to justice? And it's so sad until we as America, I'm talking black, I'm talking every color, start looking at it and saying, you know what, there is something wrong. We need to address this. If we do that, we won't have to use all these different means to bring attention to injustice in this country, which there is.
Yep.
And that, like our pastor said, this big white elephant sitting in the middle of the road, and everybody's acting like there's no elephant. There is one.
Well, there is one.
And until we address it, it's going to continue to be so. So I say, hey, I honor all those that have enough nerves to say, you know what, I'm going to bring attention to this injustice, no matter what it costs me.
No, absolutely right. And ladies and gentlemen of America, this is coming from veterans, those that have served our country. Again, those Norman Bowden, Denver Harper, 42 years combined service to this nation. Dennis, your service to this country, I don't know the length of time.
20 years.
20 years. We're talking 62 years of service. Their voices are being heard. They are on the front lines in more ways than one. Is somebody going to hear their voice? Got a clip right now. A veteran came out nationally supporting Colin
Kaepernick.
I keep calling him Colin. It's Colin Kaepernick. And his fight for justice. The veterans came out and said, we applaud you. Then what is the president talking about? Let's hear what they have to say.
For the second game in a row, Colin Kaepernick chose not to stand during the national anthem. The Niners quarterback criticized by fans and on social media, saying he's dishonoring the flag and the military. But new this hour, a group of veterans is now getting behind Kaepernick. They're writing an open letter in favor of his right to, quote, silent protest. That letter published online just within the last half hour on medium.com. Joining me now, one of the authors of that letter, we've got U.S. Army veteran Richard Allen Smith. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump into this. Why write this letter in the first place? What prompted you to do this?
Well, I saw a lot of folks claiming that Colin Kaepernick was disrespecting troops or somehow disrespecting veterans with the protests that he's making. A lot of those people not having served themselves. And I think me and my colleagues who signed this letter really wanted to make sure that there was a voice out there saying, look, those people don't speak for us. There are many veterans that support both Colin Kaepernick's right to protest and also agree with him that Black Lives Matter and there's something that needs to be done in America about institutional racism.
So some critics, though, argue that there is a way to protest, there is a way to send that message without being, in their view, disrespectful. Do you agree?
I agree that there are other ways to protest, and I would hope lots of people would find other ways to protest. And if people feel that this way to protest is the best for them, they should do that too, just as Colin Kaepernick did. He has that right. They have that right. We all have our own right to choose to protest according to the First Amendment. I don't think it was disrespectful at all. In fact, I think it was one of the most respectful things a person can do for military service. We fought for everyone's right to protest. We also fought for, when you join the military, you pledge an oath to a constitution that says that, it proclaims an intent in the preamble that we will support domestic tranquility and provide, all sorts of things like that, all sorts of liberties to everyone in America. And those liberties certainly aren't being provided to everyone right now.
So in this letter, there's the comparison drawn between Colin Kaepernick and Jackie Robinson. Talk a little bit here about why you think that is a valid or fair comparison.
Well, Jackie Robinson wrote in his autobiography that he could no longer say the Pledge of Allegiance or stand or salute during the national anthem. Jackie Robinson, prior to being a Major League Baseball player for the Brooklyn Dodgers, was also an Army captain. He was a veteran, and he agreed with Colin Kaepernick in his time that he couldn't support standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And we honor and revere Jackie Robinson and folks like him and Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis and these folks for doing the exact same thing that Colin Kaepernick is doing now.
But the tone of the protest, I think, is raising some questions, right? During training camp, you remember Kaepernick wore those socks with caricatures of police officers. Is that the way to go about this?
If Colin Kaepernick thinks that's the way to go about it, I think he should do that. We wouldn't all choose to protest in the identical manner, but everyone has their right to choose that. And I think it's a little disingenuous to talk about Colin Kaepernick's disrespect. Let's talk about the disrespect afforded to African Americans in America. According to the Washington Post, African Americans are 2.5 times more likely to be shot and killed by police than white people. That's disrespect. I find it, missing the forest for the trees a little bit to talk about a pair of socks when we have African Americans in America dying in the streets.
You saw the game last night. He was booed by fans, some of them. How do you think fans should respond to this protest by Kaepernick? What would you like to see?
I would like to see a lot of support for Colin Kaepernick, both for his stand and for the movement for Black Lives. But just as Colin Kaepernick has his right to protest, fans have their right to respond however they see fit. But I disagree with those folks that boo him, and I wholeheartedly endorse Colin Kaepernick in his stand and the message behind it. And I would like to say that I speak here today for myself. What's in the letter, the text of the letter that you can see at veteransforkaepernick.us. All the folks signing that letter, that's what they signed on to. I'm speaking for myself here today, but I definitely support Colin Kaepernick.
Richard Allen Smith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And there you have it. I mean, some profound words being talked there. That is a white veteran who served in the armed services of this country, that makes the statement, I support. And what was the website? Did you get that, William?
Veterans for Kaepernick. It's actually a trending hashtag. I'm gonna look it up now.
Okay, and well, he's alluding to the fact there are a lot of veterans that have come on board to support this cause in this fight. Your thoughts on it, Dennis, when you hear that come from, again, non-black supporters. What does that say to you?
Because and what what he was addressing in that clip, the veteran was addressing, is justice. I mean, that's all it's really about. It's about he actually said, I know that there is a serious problem when you got two out of every three black men, most likely will get shot if pulled over or killed. And so he was addressing the issue, and I loved it the way he made sure they understood. Get off the socks. It's not about the socks.
Made a good point.
Yeah, he made such a good point. It's not about the socks, but that's where the reporter immediately went. No, let's talk about the black lives lives that are being lost. That's why he's kneeling. He's trying to bring awareness that we have a problem in this United States of America when it comes to people of color being pulled over by officers
and killed. That's just the discussion. I salute him. We're going to go and check this site out, and I tend to reach out to that gentleman. I think that's profound. He said, if you want to talk disrespect, he said, it's ironic you're talking disrespect for a pair of socks. No, what's disrespectful are black folks are getting killed at the hands of those who are there to serve and to protect. And again, we do not put them all in the same boat.
Exactly.
You have some good officers, good job, and we salute them for what they do. And William, when you talk about this, really the conversation, why don't we have more coverage of the support for Kaepernick? Where's that at?
Well, the thing is, and this is the thing that really eats at me. It's what they've done is they've basically demonized Kaepernick, and they try to make him non-patriotic, and they talk about his efforts to basically shine a light on that, to take it away from the actual injustice. So they try to ruin his credibility, and we've seen that. They were booing him, and now he's not in the NFL. They say he's still in player-ready condition. They're questioning why this man is not in the NFL. They're questioning why the owners are not contacting him. See, this is the fallout of a stand that he's taken. And we've seen that through history. Martin Luther King received death threats and so much for the stand that he took. Now, so the thing is, if you can shine a light on and question this person's integrity or their motivation, then it takes away from the social injustice that is truly at the root of it. That's why that man said, you missed the forest for the trees. You're talking about some socks when the real injustice is here. He also pointed out, he said, he compared him to Jackie Robinson. He compared him to Muhammad Ali. He compared him to Joe Louis. All of them have received some kind of, backlash for the stance that they took.
And they were demonized.
Yes.
Even it was a huge issue with Muhammad Ali and the stand he took. He was demonized for that, but at the time of his death, they called him a hero.
And Mr. Perrino had said first, sorry, Mon, I didn't mean to cut you off, but he said first, he said that it was 3 years of his life
away from his livelihood
that he fought for his right. The stance that he took cost him 3 years. Mm-hmm. And yes, upon his death, he was revered as a hero.
And that is ironic. And we have had protesters from the beginning of time. Somebody has not agreed. Somebody said, I have a voice.
That's right. Well, the civil rights movement was, we have a voice. We have a right. Martin Luther King says, I have a dream. His whole speech was this: I have a dream of equality. And he was saying, why do you guys keep us in this, put lines and boundaries around us? You asked, the first thing you had said at the beginning of this show was, why does it happen when black people do that? Why does it happen when black people try to stand up and protest social injustice? And I really think it's because people don't want to remember the history in which this country was founded on racism. It was founded on the backs of slavery. And so it's like, don't make us remember this stuff. Don't take us back and uncover the dirt that we did. Because the bottom line is it's continued.
And that's the point. The reason it is so sensitive is not because it's in the past.
It's today.
It's today. When the lady said to me on the plane, I wonder if I'm living in the 1960s because of what is happening in this country. There is no sensitivity for things that we have overcome as a society. We don't deal with the issues. We don't have a problem talking about where we were then and where we are now when we have come to a point of completion. The uncomfortable part of this conversation is America having to take a look that we have not completed this tragedy, nor has it ended. We read a poem now by Charles M. Province of the U.S. Army, and it's titled, "It is the Soldier." It is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. It is the soldier. We'll be right back.
Congress
shall make no law
respecting an establishment
of religion
or prohibiting the free exercise
thereof,
or abridging the freedom of speech
or of the press,
or the right
of the people, peaceably
to assemble
and to petition
the government
for a redress of grievances.
We have a big problem, and we need your help.
It's happening on college campuses, at bars, at parties, even in high schools.
It's happening to our sisters and our daughters,
our wives and our friends.
It's called sexual assault, and it has to stop. We have to stop it. So listen up.
If she doesn't consent, or if she can't consent, it's rape, it's assault.
It's a crime. It's wrong.
If I saw it happening, I was taught you have to do something about it.
If I saw it happening, I speak up.
If I saw it happening, I'd never blame her. I'd help her.
Because I don't want to be a part of the problem. I want to be a part of the solution.
We need all of you to be part of the solution. This is about respect. It's about responsibility.
It's up to all of us to put an end to sexual assault. And that starts with you.
Because one is too many.
Sergeant Michelle Garcia served meritoriously in Iraq and has the medals to prove it. Soon after leaving the Navy, Lieutenant Chris Scott found a job, a home, and started a family of his own. Corpsman Richard Stokely took the skills he learned in Vietnam and put them to good use as a paramedic. But soon after leaving the military, each of these veterans fell on hard times and faced homelessness. Even after Michelle lost all her savings, even after Chris wasn't able to pay his mortgage, and even after Richard battled alcoholism for years, they each reached out for help when they needed it most. A simple phone call put them in touch with a trained professional from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That call got Michelle a place to stay until she could afford one of her own, put Chris in touch with employment assistance, and found Richard a substance abuse program. These veterans are success stories not only for how they were able to help others while serving their country, but for how they were able to let others help them. If you know of or are a veteran in need, make the call.
Here are 50 white guys. Here are 50 black guys. Here's how many white guys can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. The chances amount to 1 out of 17. Now here's how many black guys can expect the same thing. The chances are 1 out of 3. Why? Lots of reasons. It's complicated, but one thing is clear. There's racial bias at every level of the criminal justice system. When blacks and whites commit the same kind of crimes, blacks are more likely to be arrested. Once arrested, they're more likely to be convicted. Once convicted, they're more likely to serve longer sentences. Look at the numbers in America's so-called war on drugs. About 14% of American drug users are black, as are about a quarter of drug sellers. Yet blacks are 34% of the people arrested for drug crimes. And those convicted of drug crimes, 46% are black. By the time we factor in sentencing, there are actually more black drug offenders than white ones in state prisons and in federal prisons. In the end, the incarceration rate for drug crimes is 10 times higher for blacks than it is for whites. These are the facts. Racial disparity in America's war on drugs is one big reason that 1 out of 3 black men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime.
And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen of America. AJC Radio having a conversation tonight about the right to protest under fire in America. And this conversation has gotten very detailed. And right now we have Pastor Banks calling in with a comment. Pastor Banks, go ahead.
Yes, I want to. I was sitting here thinking that you were talking about how the NFL, they bowed on their knees. Do you know what? When I got to thinking about that, I'm thinking to bow to something is not a bad thing, because that's the position in which the body is supported when praying or showing submission. So could not also, this also meant that wasn't a dishonor to the flag? These people are submitting themselves and no doubt asking God to change this situation. So what's wrong with kneeling? Have we become such a hypocritical nation until if you kneel for anything else, because we want to be sure you're not kneeling in front of God? What is this issue? What's wrong with kneeling? It's a place of submission. So you can't blame these people for saying bad things against the flag. They're showing submission. They got down on their knees, and they also, no doubt, whispered a prayer. So what's wrong with kneeling? It didn't do anything to the flag. It didn't take anything from it. It's saying we just want to be treated fair. That's all it's saying. So the position I put my body in, why is that being made such a big deal of? That's what shocks me. When I kneel, I get all this criticism just because I kneel, and you want to say I'm disrespecting? That's not a position of disrespect. A disrespect would be if I said or done something terrible to the flag, but I haven't done that. I just kneel while they sang the national anthem and the flag is there. What's wrong with that? I think somebody needs to stop a minute and think kneeling is a submissive position. So how can you call it disrespect? Nobody is disrespecting anything. We're just trying to say, hey, let's do this thing right. Let's all have a fair shake instead of doing this. So while they're talking about kneeling, don't kneel. Well, why wouldn't you want me to kneel? It's a place of submission. That's where you've had us most of our lives. That's right. I just wanted to call in and say that I just thought about it this evening. I thought, wow. Yeah, I don't think if they want to protest on their knees, what a good way to do it.
Absolutely.
And thanks for having me on.
And thanks
Bye-bye.
for your time. Thank you so much. True point. Never thought of it that way, but it is a position of submission. That's awesome. And when you look at it that way in situations, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Catholic Church, there's a place they come at the altar where people will take a knee. And that is a point of reverence. Good point by Pastor Banks. True words. We're going to play a clip right now regarding a story of a 6-year-old boy who decided to kneel and to take a knee. Let's hear what happened.
The bottom line is that mom spoke to me tonight about what happened at this elementary school because she does not want her son silenced. She says she just him to have an open mind, and she believes this issue is much bigger than him. A Pasco County mom says she wasn't expecting the text she got from her son's first grade teacher.
I knew where he had seen it, but I did tell him that in the classroom we are learning what it means to be a good citizen.
Telling her the 6-year-old didn't stand during the Pledge of Allegiance.
What that said to me was that him taking a knee was the exact opposite. He was disrespectful of the country. He was being disrespectful of the flag.
The mom says she didn't tell her son to do it, but regardless, her issue is with how it played out at school.
She told him right away, based on what he told me, to stand up and to stop it. That's not her right.
It would have been better if the teacher had pulled the student aside and talked about it without the other students witnessing it.
Linda Kopp with the district says they follow state law.
The only way that a student can be exempted from reciting the Pledge of Allegiance is if they have a written request from their parents. And even then, the law says that they still have to stand.
They plan to discuss the policy with parents and staff. They say respect and civility are important.
We certainly would not want to infringe on anyone's rights.
This mom hopes everyone will learn from this.
The bigger issue is cultural. They have demonstrated to me through multiple incidents that they don't take inclusion and diversity serious.
I am told the principal of this school and that mother are supposed to have some sort of discussion tomorrow. That young boy did not get in trouble, nor that teacher. Both parties hope that this will be a teachable moment. Reporting live, Maricela Burgos, ABC Action News.
And there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, AJC Radio, well, we are talking about some serious topics tonight. We are joined in the studio tonight, Denver Harper, Norman Bowden. We were joined earlier by Nico Perrino, representative of fire and director of communications for that organization, doing some good things there in New York. And I'd like to get your thoughts, Norman, on the last clip. The 6-year-old boy told to stand up after taking a knee, a 6-year-old. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that goes back to what I was saying about the president saying things that he shouldn't say. You got kids looking and listening. Well, evidently, this kid, the mother says she never told him not to do that, but he's seen it on television. He's seen what's going on with Colin Kaepernick. I hope I pronounced that name right. Kaepernick. Yeah. Well, Colin. He's seen this. So in his mind, 6 years old, he's saying that it's a good thing to do.
Sure.
And I respect that wholeheartedly.
No, and Denver, your thoughts on that?
I think that the teacher was totally wrong in how she handled the whole situation. And if the kid decided that, hey, I don't want to do this, I'm not going to do it. He has that right to do it.
Well, go ahead, Denver.
And I think I heard they said it's a state law that requires him to do that.
No.
That's totally wrong in the little piece that was there.
Well, look, the right to protest, the Constitution supersedes
the state
law.
Exactly.
The Constitution is a whole nother ball game. And when you start messing with a 6-year-old boy, it tells you, they said this during the entire campaign season with President Trump, your words matter. He has not honored that. He doesn't have a clue. Your words reached all the way into a classroom with a 6-year-old boy that made him want to take a knee. That's serious business. And the responsibility, we say all the time, the office of the presidency requires respect, requires it. It's not an option. It must be respected. If you want your soldiers, Commander-in-Chief Trump, to respect you, you've caused more discord within the armed services and within the homes of the United States of American citizens by your loose and reckless language. It's reckless. Bottom line. Denver.
I thought about what it would be like as an NCO right now trying to handle what's going on with the president. What do you tell your troops? I mean, they got a mind, they make decisions. And then for the president to come up and be making all of these weird statements, how are you as a leader going to keep your troops in line when we are right at the verge of war? What are you going to tell them? That has to be a very difficult situation now, especially for the NCO Corps.
Norman, your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. There's enough discord as it is in the military as it is, but for a commander-in-chief not to be in the position that he should be, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Well, right now we're going to hear another statement. Michael Strahan, he's a former NFL player, played with the New York Giants. He's on Fox Sports, Fox Sunday, if you will. Also on Good Morning America. He spoke out, made a good point I think is worth listening to. Let's see what he had to say.
One of the big things right now, the big issue, I guess, around the NFL was Colin Kaepernick. Yeah. And it's something that I struggle with. My dad's a career military man himself. And thinking about his career and what it meant, here's a player I thought did something that was such a distraction for the team and for himself on a personal level. But after taking a step back and realizing he did something, even though the approach couldn't have been, isn't what everybody wouldn't have done, it could be seen as drastic, his reasoning was legitimate. And I think he has something that is so many athletes are criticized for not having a real social conscience or really standing up. Here's a guy who stood up for something that I think affects a lot of other people and not just himself. And for that, I have to respect that. And it's right or wrong in your eyes or my eyes or anybody else's. He started a stronger conversation, which is what he meant to do. And I think at the end of the day, once it gets past him him kneeling and gets back to the social conscious conversation that he wanted, then I think his message can be delivered in a way that was intended.
I agree. If there is dialogue and there's a solution to this, I believe in the First Amendment, right? For a person to speak his mind. Only in this great country, folks, can you do this. And I think that I think that there would have been another way to go ahead and protest. Listen, we go back to protest, my God, all the way back to Vietnam War when they were burning the flags. Gee whiz. But I am number one an American first. I absolutely love the national anthem. I absolutely love looking at that flag. And to tell you that when my father passed away and they put that flag, my dad was a Navy guy, and they placed that flag in my mother's lap, that just tore my heart apart. I just think there is another way to do it.
Well, I think it's really hard to put history in perspective as it's happening. And make no mistake about it, I think that's exactly what's happening here with Colin Kaepernick. You look at how his actions were viewed within the first 24 hours, drastically different than they're being viewed now a couple, 3 weeks later. Although I disagree with him using the anthem as a forum, I do agree with his message of wanting to start a conversation which would exact a change. The conversation has started not only around the country, but for us in our league, more importantly, in every locker room. Mission accomplished. Now, whether the change occurs, only time and history will tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a coach, coaches are paid to win football games, and so they want their team focused on winning, and that's their job. The only thing is, even coaches, as important a social issue as this is, they have got to be focused on this as well.
I don't think everybody's going to agree on all sides of this issue like no issue, but I do think most level-headed people can see multiple sides of an issue, whether you agree with it or not, and understand the take that he
start a conversation.
That he wants to start a conversation. And as you said, Howie, not only has he started a conversation, he's also donating his money, $1 million out of his pocket. The San Francisco 49ers have done the same. The Green Bay Packers and Mike McCarthy each have donated $100,000. All the local organizations to try and help the relationship between the community and the local police department. And if we get that and that conversation going, then maybe change will actually happen. Jay Glazer joins us right now. A little bit more on this. Jay, when this all started,
people were wondering would Kaepernick even make the team. Right. How is it standing right now? And what are other teams talking about with potential protests or demonstrations today?
Well, Colin Kaepernick's made a complete 180. Here was a guy a year ago was at an island away from everybody else in that locker room. And now he's actually brought the entire team together. As you're saying, even the owners of the team are donating money to charities. But Nate Boyer, you guys know I have a military charity with. He's a former Green Beret and former Seattle Seahawks. He went and met with Colin Kaepernick and showed him text messages from military. This is the effect that you're having on people. As a result of that, Nate has also been brought to go talk to the Seattle Seahawks. He talked to the players there, coaches and GM there. They're going to lock arm in arm today, together as a team, unified. Nate told me also that there's been a group chat from team captains throughout the NFL going on all week, including this morning, about what they should do as well. And as far as coaches are concerned, they said, most of the coaches I talked to said, they talk to all their players saying, listen, guys, if you're going to make a stand, just understand what stand you're making and making sure it's for the right reason. Understand the ramifications.
And there you have it. Some good dialogue going on there with the Fox Sunday pregame team and saying some good things that, and this is what people are really not paying attention to. At the time that Kaepernick was not when he was without a job, he never veered from his donation of $1 million out of his pocket. That's without having work. That's without anything. William, your thoughts?
I the thing about that statement that I really liked was the fact that we were talking about, what has happened from the time he started to that point, how now the team had been brought together, the owners had been participating in, and the coaches now were actually actively looking at this and saying, yes, this is an issue. We need to contribute to this. So they talked about just the contrast from the fact that he was on an island by himself to now bringing the team together and around this one social issue, and how much his stand had brought light to that. And that's what's needed.
No, absolutely right. And I think the conversation, look, it's happening right now, and there's always a price when you take a stand against that which is wrong. We'll be right back with our closing thoughts and our closing segment. This is AJC Radio, the right to protest under fire. What happens next? We'll be right back.
Excuse me. I've been getting mixed messages about women and violence. I need a little clarification.
Uncle Bill, how am I supposed to grow up to respect women when I have such lousy role models?
Boys are never going to approach you.
Can you help me reshape my attitudes towards women?
You need to teach them that violence against women is wrong.
You can tell a lot about someone by what they spend their money on, their priorities, their concerns, and their motives. Big Pharma says their top priority is research and development. They say that prescription drug costs are so high because they spend so much on research. But the simple truth is 9 out of the 10 biggest pharma companies spend 50% more on advertising than they do on research and development. It's true, tens of billions more. The more they spend, the clearer it becomes. Big Pharma's priorities are more ads, more sales, and higher costs to you. It's time for Big Pharma to get their priorities straight. Americans deserve open and honest prescription drug pricing. Let's solve the cost crisis now. Visit CSRX.
You must have thrown 1,000 pitches teaching him to hit a home run. Spent countless Saturdays running routes so he could learn to hit an open receiver. Endless afternoons teaching him how to hit the three-pointer. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit? Teaching boys that all violence against women is wrong is one of the most important things a man can do. Learn how to start the conversation at teachearly.org. Brought to you by Futures Without Violence and the Ad Council. And
welcome back in, folks. This is AJC Radio. I'll tell you what, this has been an interesting show as we've dealt with some issues here. I'll tell you what, it's got you really pumped up to be someone that will stand against status quo and feel proud about doing that. And I believe our two veterans in studio have given us some indication of just how important that is. Denver Harper, Norman Bowden, and Dennis Merritt, who is always here as a host of this show. They brought some perspective from the veteran perspective. And I'll tell you what, it makes you feel proud. It makes you want to go and take a knee right now because this is what they fought for. And the poem we read, wow. I'll tell you what. And William, your thoughts?
No, I agree. The poem and the veteran stance was, is great because I mean they have fought for the right for them to be able to protest.
Oh, absolutely right. And Norman, let me ask you, what have you taken from this show tonight?
Actually, that yes, I totally agree that we fought for the right to protest, and I think that anybody that feel that they don't have that right, then they need to speak to a veteran that has been on the battlefield, not necessarily a battlefield, but one has spent time in the military. You spent more than a year, yes, talk to that veteran for a while, and I think you will realize that, yeah, you have the right to protest.
Denver, your thoughts?
I am very proud to have been here and express my feelings about the whole thing, and I am proud to have served so that the people that I know can go ahead and kneel or whatever form of protest they have my backing.
And listen, folks, I'll tell you what, we got a great deal of respect for you, the service you've given to this country. Listen, I made a statement when we were honoring members of the military. I've never served my father. I cannot let this night go without mentioning my father, who served 20 and a half years, I believe, in the U.S. Army. Fought in Vietnam as well, twice. And my dad was a true soldier. And we salute him tonight, along with you guys and all the veterans across this country that have given of yourself and the sacrifices that have been made, not only by the soldiers, but the families of these soldiers, man. We appreciate what you guys have done. I saw a gentleman today coming into a store. I stopped. I was in a rush, but he had a uniform on. And I turned around. I said, before I go, thank you for your service. And he said, man, thank you so much. That means so much. And I think we need to do that. And again, if that's not honoring our men, and I don't care where I'm at, where I go, if I see a uniform, no matter what branch of the service it is, I'm going to stop and say thank you. Dennis, your thoughts as we give our final thoughts on this show.
Yeah, well, it's a great show. And I just wanted to say a lot of people always talk about how they truly is about the American flag and about our soldiers. But me being a soldier, and I haven't seen, shipping equipment and graffiti on equipment where, and these are Americans that's doing the graffiti on the soldiers, on the equipment, talking about, how they dislike America and how they dislike all this and that. And then it's so hypocritical to come out and now all of a sudden you're for the flag. But, there are some that's out there that truly care about our soldiers, and I appreciate that.
And Cliff, your closing thoughts on this show and the perspective that's been brought to us tonight.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just brings home that there's more that feel, that Americans have the right to protest and understand why we have the right. It just seems like, the ones who are getting their voice out there, who've been in the media, are the few and far between that want to, protest the right to protest. Like when the president was saying, the NFL doesn't have any fans. And then the next game, you see the stands are full. It's those type of things, that type of rhetoric that just really, disrespect and dishonor the Constitution on the whole. But, I feel that the right to protest is just one of our basic rights as far as being a human being. And in America, we have to continue to fight for those rights and make sure that nobody ever takes them from us.
Oh, absolutely. A very special thanks to Mr. Nico Perrino for joining us tonight on this program. For all those in social media talking about this, we're hearing a lot of conversation out there. And a very special thank you, Denver, Harper, Norman Bowden. Thank you so much for your service to this nation and for taking time tonight to get in this conversation. And Dennis, of course, as always, thank you for your perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, this is AJC Radio. Good night.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over that. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights. So just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a